Today you're going to be taking the quiz over 3.1 to 3.3. And while I might not be here physically with you, I am still, of course, here with you in spirit. So I want to make sure that you all have great quiz grades going into the long weekend. As you're watching this, you can have this video paused if you want to get a chance to work on the problem. And then when it looks like everybody's ready, you can play the video and then see that you got the problems correct. I will go through 3 problems because there are 3 types of problems on the quiz. You have to know how to solve equations by graphing, by substitution, by elimination, and when it is inequality. So I'm going to go through, the only one I'm not going to take you through right now is the solving by graphing. It was the most basic, most simplistic technique, but I am going to do a solving with graphing with the inequality, so you get to see that. So we're going to start with the first one. If you look at the first one, the directions will say solve this system using any method. So your choices for this would be to either do substitution or elimination. Because when you look at the second line, you already have the x isolated, you know what x equals. This one lends itself to substitution because I can very easily take what I know x is and plug it in, substitute it in where x is in the other line. So this is what that will look like. You'll take 5 times the 1/2 y plus 8. You want to make sure you put the 1/2 y plus 8 in parentheses so you remember to distribute, plus 6y equals negative 45. Distribute, so you get 5/2 y plus 40 plus 6y equals negative 45. Combine like terms, so I have 5/2 y plus 6y. You can do that in your calculator if you need to. You end up with 17/2 y. You can subtract 40 from both sides. You get negative 85. And then finally, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply by 2 over 17. If you need to, you can pull up your calculator, type in negative 85 times 2 over 17. So negative 85 times 2 divided by 17. And I get negative 10. So that tells me that y equals negative 10. Keep in mind your answers will not be a single number. They have to be a point because you are finding the point of intersection, which is an x and a y. So once you know one, I'm going to take negative 10 and I'm going to put it right back into what I circled. Half of negative 10 plus 8 is negative 5 plus 8, which is 3. So my answer is the point 3, negative 10. You have found the solution. You have also found visually where these two lines will intersect, will meet. For the second one is a little bit different setup, so we're going to take a little different technique. The second one is in standard form, both equations. When it's in standard form, the easier technique is to do elimination, not substitution. Elimination meant you found a way to get either the x's or the y's to be opposite so that they will eliminate, so that they will cancel. There's a couple ways to do this one. I'm going to work with the x's. I'm going to multiply the top line by 2 and the bottom line by negative 5. You might have done negative 2 and positive 5. You might have instead said you want to get rid of the y's. There's a lot of options here. I'm going to rewrite my new lines. So I get 10x plus 12y equals negative 32. And negative 10x, you can see the opposites show up, minus 50y equals negative 25. Make sure you remember to multiply everything by that number, not just the stuff on the left. Your x's are eliminated. You have 12 minus 50, which is negative 38. And then you have a negative 57. Not the prettiest looking answer that's going to result. Divide by negative 38. If you want to see if it reduces, we know the negatives will cancel. We can take 57 divided by 38. It's not looking very promising for reducing. Can't get it to be a whole number, but we do get it to be a fraction. So 3/2 is a lot better than 57 38ths. If you want to use 1.5 instead of 3/2, that's fine too. So that is my y value. Again, my answer has to be a full point, so I need to find the x that goes with it. This is going to take a little more work. You have to choose which line to put this in. I'm just going to put it in the top line, put it right there. So I have 5x plus 6 times 3/2 equals negative 16. So 5x plus 9 equals negative 16. Subtract 9. I get 5x equals negative 25, and I actually do get an integer answer for x. I get negative 5. So my answer is the point, negative 5, positive 3/2, or positive 1.5. Again, that answer means that is the point in which these two lines will intersect. The last one that you have to do up here is the last type of question you'll have on the quiz. These are linear inequalities. The difference with these is they're going to be completely visual, and you are doing shading. Your goal is to figure out where the shading overlaps. So you want to make sure you have some sort of grid. On the quiz, I will give you a grid so you don't have to worry about creating your own XY coordinate. You want to make sure you're graphing each, and as you go, you are shading to see where the shading overlaps. You choose how you graph it. So for the first one, I'm going to do the cover-up method. So I have x equals -6 for my first one. That's my x-intercept. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then to get my y-intercept of the first line, I get 2y equals -6, so y equals -3. Make sure before you connect, you look to see if you want it to be dotted or solid. This will be a solid line. If you accidentally make it 1 and you need to switch it, you're welcome to just write next to it what it's supposed to be. I'm going to use 0, 0 as my test point. So 0 greater than or equal to -6 is true. So I'm going to shade towards 0, 0. You probably want to do this first shading really light because you know you have more shading to go. So you might want to pick something like a very light color, maybe a light green, giving you this region up here. Again, my goal is to find where all the shading overlaps. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the second line. I'm going to do the cover-up method again. So I get x equals 2. So that gives me my x-intercept. 2y equals 2, so y equals 1. Gives me my y-intercept. I'm going to connect with a solid line once again. And I'm going to do the same thing for shading. I'm going to put 0 in. 0 is less than or equal to 2. That is a true statement. So what you'll see now is now you're shading underneath that line. So now my shading, I'm going to go a little bit darker, use red. Right now my shading is falling between these two lines that look to be parallel. So I'm above the first line I drew and below the second line I drew. I've got one more to do. This one is a lot easier to graph. It's a y only, so this is going to be a horizontal line. You're going to go to -1 and draw a solid horizontal line. We are wanting to shade where we are greater than -1, so we are shading above that line. So my end result, I'm going to make the darkest or the brightest possible, is going to be above the -1 line, under this line right here, and above this line right here. The name, we call this a feasible region. It was the region, the shading region that everyone had in common. It's not bounded. It will continue to go on forever, but I'm just going to shade very darkly. Please make sure when you take your quiz, it is very obvious to me as the person grading it exactly what you want the final answer to be. It should be the darkest. If you're using like pencil and pen, it should be the dark pen so I can see where is that final answer. If you need to write a note or kind of shade or use whiteout, you're welcome to do that as you're taking the quiz. Hopefully now, even without me actually physically being in the room, you are all ready to do wonderful on the quiz.